Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Tonko, for his 5 minutes of question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Secretary, for appearing before the subcommittee, and thank you for the leadership that you provide and that of your team. Reports earlier this year cited criticism of ORR's sponsor vetting. I want to begin by asking about how the current process works and where there may be a need for improvement. ORR is legally obligated to release children to sponsors, and I quote, without unnecessary delay. So ORR has to strike a careful balance between rigorously vetting sponsors and the reality that it cannot, legally or ethically, hold children in shelters indefinitely. Children held in any congregate care facility for prolonged periods of time can suffer damaging physical and psychological health effects. It is in the best interest of the child to release that individual to caring sponsors as soon as the sponsor is vetted as safe. So, Secretary Becerra, your testimony goes into detail about the sponsor vetting process and the types of vetting that happens depending on the sponsor's relationship with the child. I want to make certain we all understand what happens during that vetting process and clear up any misconceptions. Can you briefly describe what goes into ORR's sponsor vetting process?
Congressman, thank you, because there is so much misunderstanding and misinformation about the vetting process. We begin by searching for a sponsor who is as close to the child as possible. Obviously, the parents would be the closest, guardian, adult sibling, grandparents. Those folks are what we call Category 1 sponsors because they are the closest to them. We have to go through the process of verifying that they are who they say they are. So each sponsor must submit a detailed application giving us information about their identity, their address, their relationship to the child. They must provide additional supporting documents. They must provide us with records, whether it's a birth certificate or whether it's a driver's license. They must go through background checks. They have to go through a home study where we actually send people to talk specifically with the potential sponsor and household members if we need to confirm more information. And oftentimes, we will also do voluntary DNA testing. But we do everything we can to certify, to verify that the people are who they say they are.
Thank you. And how does ORR's standard of review differ from considering a sponsor application from a close family member versus when it considers a sponsor application from a non-family member? And why is it important for ORR to differentiate between these categories of sponsors?
Thank you for that question, because again, people are confusing this. There are sponsors who are unrelated to the child, maybe close friends, but unrelated by blood to the child. We do far more work to try to make sure that that person is who he or she says he is or she is, because they're not related. And that Category 1, where it's the parent or the guardian or very close relative, if they are providing us with valid documentation, then we want, because it's in the best interest of the child, we try to move that child to that parent without delay. There was a time early in 2021 when there was delay because of the number of kids we had, and simply trying to get to all of the children was tough. Now that's why we are under 1 month of stay in our care, because we're able to now process, especially those Category 1 sponsors, far quicker, because so long as we get the valid information, there's no reason to keep a child from being with a parent or a legal guardian. If you're a relative but not a real close relative, well, we have to do more vetting to make sure that you are who you say you are. We contact the parents in the home country. We ask them to verify. We ask the children, do you know this individual? We go through a number of steps. That's why virtually all of the children that we release to a vetted sponsor are related to that sponsor, because we make every effort to make sure it's with family. Hopefully very near family, parent, adult sibling, grandparent, or not, maybe a cousin, but we go through more checks. And if not a cousin, not a relative, then you're gonna go through a lot of checks. That's why we have what we call our Category 4 kids. It's tough to find any type of relative sponsor. It's tough to find anyone who's a close friend that we have found verifiable. And so we have a category of children who've been in our care for quite some time. It's because we're not willing to let them go until we can verify that they will be with a trusted sponsor.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Secretary, how is ORR evaluating its sponsorship guidelines in light of revelations of labor abuses happening post-release?
Congressman, as I said, my father was one of those kids. There was never any problem with him finding work, even though he was not even a teenager. And there were occasions when he would not get paid for his labor. We've known about child labor for a long time. It's not just migrant kids, but certainly with migrant kids. We have an obligation to do everything we can. And with every authority we have, and even beyond that, we're going to do everything we can to provide health and safety for those children, even after we've lost custody and care of that child.
Mr. Secretary, I again appreciate you appearing before the subcommittee, and thank you for your responses.
Thank you.
I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back, now recognizes